Hi, I'm Lauren Edmonds. I'm the founder and owner of a school that supports children with learning delays. I'm hoping this space gives you something to think about.
How do you create a low demand environment that suits children who have high levels of anxiety or perhaps diagnoses like PDA, pathological demand avoidance, or rather pervasive drive for autonomy, or ODD, or any kind of behavior check where children are struggling with regulated behavior? Because high demand tends to push children out of their window of tolerance and into fight or flight or fawn or freeze. But low demand, while keeping them in their window of tolerance, doesn't get progress. And which one beats out the other? Is regulation more important than progress, or progress more important than regulation? Do they have to go together? And actually, as I'm saying it out loud, they have to go together. We can't actually have one without the other, because when we get a child regulated, what is the point if we're not using the regulated state to progress him? And I think we get a bit gun shy as the regulators, as parents and educators and anybody in the care of a child or caring for a child that is really struggling with dysregulation. Because when that dysregulation ramps up into aggressive and even violent and self-harm behavior, that needs to be de-escalated as fast as possible, because it puts other people in harm's way, including the child, physical harm's way, not even mentioning emotional harm. So we've got to de-escalate that, bring them down the ladder, if you will, back into their window of tolerance. But if they are avoiding any kind of demand, we bring work to them at that level, and if we get it wrong, we escalate them again. And there's this bouncing backwards and forwards into tolerance and then out of tolerance, and into dysregulation and out of regulation. And there's this massive amount of disorder in a child's experience of the world. And I see disorder as this jumping between states so often that there's almost like you can't catch your breath. Experiencing yourself differently so often that in some ways we're creating this sort of split between who am I when this happens versus who am I when that happens. How do we get that integrated so we don't lose the child in this experience they have of themselves as being or experiencing things differently and being different? Because they actually are being different. A child who's regulated in themselves, they are existing in the world in a very different way to when they are dysregulated. And I wonder if we put ourselves empathetically into a child's shoes that goes through this backwards and forwards throughout the day multiple times, the exhaustion, I would imagine, is huge. So we want to reduce this pendulum swing. We want to reduce the extent to which the extremes happen and bring them closer and closer together, always thinking that as we bring more regulation, we are working at a sustainable level, at a sustaining level, where we are helping the child to experience themselves in more calm states, in a more even-keeled state with not so many highs and lows. So they're starting to experience themselves in less extreme ways. And on the other side, we're starting to give them skills, not only to help their regulation, but to progress them academically and cognitively. That's the most important thing, is the cognitive progression, which fits within the curriculum of academics as well. And how do we play that game of balance between the two? That, because it seems to swing so widely, is we've got to find a containment where the swinging is not so extreme. And that when we swing vastly out to the one side, we understand it to be an extreme. Whether it's an extreme regulation and concentration and ability to progress is potentially equally as bad, even though it seems like a good thing, as the extreme on the other side with extreme dysregulation and absolutely no learning, and you flipped your lid, and aggressive behavior. And we've got to get that pendulum to swing less broadly and bring balance within that. And while one might be forsaken for the other at any given moment in time, we need to, I'm picturing long distance skiing where the one foot goes forward and then the other and then the other. And we just keep moving forward in this way where we are balancing both sides out at the same time and reducing the intensity of the pendulum swing until we've got something that's relatively manageable, if not completely regulated. And I don't think we're going for completely regulated all the time. I think we're going for something where the outward swing is just not so severe. Of course, we want to consider the outside environment, other people in the child's environment, but ultimately we're considering the child and how they experience themselves and how calming and grounding it would be for them if that pendulum swing didn't blast its way so far left and so far right. And the work that we can do at school is to look at that balance. If we look at it at home, the balance would be between any kind of demand and the regulation on the other side. So demand at home, if we take academics out of it completely, so take homework out of it completely, the demand at home is social interactions with immediate family, then going into external or extended family, out into the world, to the shopping center. It would be chores at home. It would be eating the food that's been placed on the table. That's where the demand on the one side. And you don't want to release that demand too much and not place any demand, because I'm just thinking from a pendulum metaphor point of view, what happens if the child goes way out in terms of dysregulation? And when they come back to swing, there's nothing that stops it. It's almost like the string holding the ball in place, the pendulum in place, gets cut, and there's no containment on the other side. So holding that containment on the one side of the pendulum swing where there is a demand on a child, perhaps we're holding it more loosely, or we're holding it as firmly, we're just holding less of it, and then they can swing down, because as we place a nice contained, calm demand on a child, the pendulum can swing back and they can find some middle ground before perhaps, and hopefully stay there for a longer period of time before they swing to the other side and dysregulate again. And then there, give them some containment again as well. I've got you. This behavior is not okay, but you are okay and you are safe. Let's bring you down into regulation again. And then let's see if we can get something out of you, whether it's chores or being kind to your friend or some mathematics. And then if that dysregulates, then we swing back and don't worry, I've got you on the other side and we're going to swing this. But we can't create the boundaries on either side of the pendulum swing so loosely that the pendulum never reduces intensity and speed, that it always swings high up to a 10 out of 10 on either side. We want to slow that down more and more. And we do it by keeping ourselves calm, slowing what we're doing down, keeping that containment. Instead of going, I've got you, where everything's fine, we want to go, I've got you. Everything's fine. I'm here. We slow our words down. We slow our movement down. And in doing that, we slow the pendulum swing down. And the idea is to keep the pendulum at the bottom part of the swing for as long as possible and allow the children to feel that groundedness and that state of flow and safety and concentration and focus and friendliness and the beautiful part of themselves, and make sure that when they're in that beautiful state of grounded regulation, that they're using a lot of I messages. And we are praising them a lot for what they're doing. So I am experiencing life so beautifully now. I am being successful. I am doing this maths even though it's hard. I am a good friend. I am capable of these things. Because when we go to the extremes on either side, that we've got to try and dissociate from. Not in terms of third person, but rather in terms of, this isn't really like you. I know you're doing this right now, and I've got you. I think what is like you is that other boy, that other girl, the other way you experience yourself, and bring that back to this association in this regulated state. So language is important. How quickly or slowly we speak is important. Using calm, empowering, enabling words like you're safe. you're okay here. Those words are very grounding and calming and empowering. And we can reduce that intensity of the pendulum. And that's the goal. Because in that reduced state, we've got more regulation within our window of tolerance. We're not in fight or flight, and our brains can work. They get turned back on. That learning switch that Anat Ben-Neil talks about gets turned back on. And when this learning switch is on, when the kid's attention is on in a calm and regulated state, not in a hyperfixated state, not in a dysregulated fight or flight state, not in a panic state, but in a calm, grounded, slow, curious state, that's when all the work really happens in the brain. And that's when we can remap, reconnect the brain to this new state of being. It's complicated and it's hard work, but it's beautiful work. And if we can stick with it as parents and as teachers, which can be sometimes harder because they're not our children and we sometimes see it as just our job. But if we can stick with it, the rewards are tenfold. They're 100x, because the progress you make can be so vastly huge, almost like the flipping of a coin. Chalk and cheese, day and night. We can see, because the behavior starts off seemingly so bad, so bigly bad, that when we can regulate, it becomes so beautifully good, and we can see such a big difference, and we can see the child enjoys themselves, enjoys being around people, enjoys life more. Regulation is not about down regulation. It's about being in a calm state so you can handle things that come your way. And that's the goal. And I'm always thinking, what kind of 25-year-old is your child going to be? Is this child going to be? And we need to think long term. We can't be thinking by Friday. However, when we've got behaviors that are extremely destructive, we want some progress by Friday. And we want it because the people in the child's life need to be able to come back another day and fight another day. But also the child needs to experience it themselves as safe and loved and capable as fast as possible. And that's tricky. And that's where all the partners involved in the child's life have to get on board. They have to be very committed to those extreme behaviors, because we want children integrated in society. We want them in schools. We want them having extramurals. We want them in friend groups. And that doesn't happen when the extreme behaviors are so extreme, because people become intolerant of it. As sad as it is, they do. And we don't want to create masking. That's not what I want to talk about at all. We're not asking the child to pretend. We're actually doing the work, the systemic work of addressing the extreme and bringing a new sense of reality, a new sense of the world, a peaceful, happier sense of the world, and then building a whole bunch of skills into the toolbox of the child so that when they are triggered, they have other things they can do. They more quickly go to regulating tools than they go to escalation. I'm relatively new in the space of PDA. We've been working with it for some time. We've been working with it in the last 2 years with the label ahead of it, which gives us a little bit more direction just in terms of research. But it's where we sit as a school. We see it a lot, and we see so much anxiety attached to it. So our priority as a school is to create not only a physically safe environment, but an emotionally and cognitively safe environment for children. So when they do act out, they realize, actually, I'm not getting pushback and it's not going to get me anywhere. But I am safe enough to drop the behaviors. It's a very interesting topic that's coming up, very interesting for us. And as much as they say once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because the range is so vast between different children and different adults. With the diagnosis, I think the same is true for a diagnosis like PDA. It's very interesting, very unique, and requires all hands on deck. But it's doable.